Evening. It is evening here in Albuquerque. It is in fact 22:11, which is 10:11 p.m. for y'all civilians on the 3rd of March. And it's a sipping and talking video. Let me get that out of the way, but it's going to be different from what I normally do for sipping and talking. Some people do what they call fresh crack videos. I've never cared to do that. But today, I picked up a barrel-proof bottle of Bernheim Original Kentucky Straight Wheat Whiskey. This is the first wheat whiskey I ever had 4 years ago, more or less. And I liked it. Went a couple of 3 years trying all different sorts of things, determining what I prefer, and then I come back and tried another one, just the regular Bernheim. That's all I'd had at the point I'm talking about. And it wasn't bad, but it didn't impress me. However, I've heard good things about the barrel proof, and I have learned over these 4 years plus that sometimes whiskey that isn't real great at 90 or 100 proof, when you boost it up to barrel proof, 120 or more, is downright good. And so, having got this today, I'm going to open it on camera and just kind of see what I think of it. I also have a new setup. You may notice that the camera is more up towards the level of my face, which makes things nice. How well it's going to work for me, I don't know, as you'll see in a moment. I hate seals, but if there's got to be a seal, let it be a paper or a plastic one with a tab that you can pull to open the seal. Anything else I don't like at all. Sometimes flat bottles have the uses, and sometimes they're a pain. Well, I can already see that this new setup is not, or has another flaw that I hadn't realized. By the way, look how dark that is. This is a barely legal wheat whiskey, and now you can see another part of why this is just not the best setup I've ever had. I'm actually going to put that over there. Things just aren't working out as I had hoped. I'm adjusting on the fly, thoroughly amateur. But I can tell you right now that the next time I set up, unless I come up with a better plan, I'll be back at the old way. But I was saying, this is a barley legal wheat whiskey, mash bill. They put it right on the label. 51% wheat, the bare minimum the law allows. 37% corn, it's a high corn whiskey. And 12% malted barley. I've mentioned in other videos that I scooch, that I'm an American. Malted is a European term, and so I say sprouted, because that's all the word means. This bottle, and I'll do a review of this at some point, and I'll go over all this info again. I bought it today at Kelly Liquors, $74.99, a $75 bottle. I don't normally buy that high. I don't normally spend that high. But I've wanted to try this for a good while. I had the money at the time. And back last year when I was looking for this, I couldn't find it anywhere. It has come back. I'd seen it a time or two before, and I figured go ahead and get it and get that out of the way. Let's see, does the side label tell me 7 to 9 years old? It is 122.6 proof. Now, this is not a single barrel, so when it says barrel proof, it's somewhat of a misnomer. It's batch proof. They take various barrels, dump them together, batch them together, but they don't temper it down. There's no added water. So all the barrels together, when they married, had a proof of 122.6, which is just a hair higher than my 122.2 proof wheat whiskey Lone Elm single barrel, which is in fact just one barrel in the bottle, from 5 Points Distilling in Forney, Texas. This comes from Heaven Hill in Bardstown, although it's the Bernheim distillery, which is in Louisville, Kentucky. There's alcohol there, I can vouch for that. And that gives me something to talk about, the terminology that you get on whiskey labels. Some of it has a legal meaning. The law defines it. For instance, this is Kentucky straight wheat whiskey. Straight is a legally defined whiskey term. In order to qualify as straight whiskey, it must be at least 2 years old. It must follow all the other rules of the type of whiskey it is, in this case wheat whiskey, which means in this case at least 51% wheat. For barley whiskey, at least 51% barley. For bourbon, at least 51% corn. For corn whiskey, at least 80% corn. Has to age in the mandated barrels, whether new charred, which is in most of them, or new uncharred or used charred. Straight whiskey, if it is between 2 and 4 years old, must have an age statement. If it is older than 4 years old, it does not have to have an age statement, but it certainly can if the distiller chooses. For straight whiskey, and this is something worth pointing out, because in recent months I've run across 2 or 3 people who, when I say good things about this whiskey or that, say, well, they've added flavor and color. Well, in every single case, it has been a straight whiskey, which means that by law, the only thing you can add before bottling is pure water to bring it down to bottling proof. You cannot add color, you cannot add flavor to a straight whiskey. So if you're worried about additions, as Canadian whiskey can do, as Scottish whiskey can do, buy straight whiskey. By law, no additions. No artificial flavor, no artificial color in straight whiskey. Also on this label, single barrel. That does not have, or excuse me, this says barrel proof. That does not have a legal definition in the United States. I've already explained that though this says barrel proof, what you're actually getting is batch proof. This is several barrels batched together and their combined proof. You know, there might have been a barrel in there that was 90 proof as they dumped it. There might have been one that was 142 when they dumped it. All the barrels together, their varying proofs wound up averaging at 122.6. So this is not barrel proof, even though the label says it is, because the law doesn't regulate that term. My first impression is that this is better than the regular, I believe it's 90 proof Bernheim wheat whiskey. There's more wheat in it. The higher proof intensifies the flavor, although this is certainly not as intense a flavor as you get from the Lone Elm that I mentioned. That Lone Elm single barrel is rich and dense and bold and intense. Although this is darker than you would get if they'd proofed it down to 90 for the standard Bernheim, it is also the product of Kentucky. And climate has an effect on aging. It can move the whiskey in and out faster or slower. In Kentucky, it's going in and out of the barrel like this. In Texas, like this. In Scotland and Ireland, like this. And the slower a whiskey picks up color and flavor from the barrel, the longer it stays in the barrel, and there are some chemical processes that require that time to work. And so you get different chemical results from aging in Scotland, in Kentucky and Tennessee, in Texas, in Nevada. And I've heard, I don't know if it's true, but I have heard that several years ago, Balcones Distilling down in Waco, Texas, took a batch from, they use pot stills, that's all they have. They took a batch, put it in various barrels, sent a barrel to Scotland, sent a barrel to Ireland, sent a barrel to Kentucky, whatever, just to see how differing climates would work on the same whiskey in the same barrels. Now, each barrel is different, granted, but sending them to different climates would give a picture of how climate affects the aging process. I've heard they did that. I have not heard anything about any results they might have obtained so far, and maybe they didn't in fact do it. It's just what I've heard. If they haven't, somebody should. Now, the term wheat whiskey does have a legal definition. It has to be at least 51% wheat. Bourbon has to be at least 51% corn. Rye whiskey has to be at least 51% rye. When it's down at 51% or not much higher, we call it barely legal, because it is. You drop the percentage of wheat in this whiskey just 1 point, and you can no longer call it wheat whiskey. Now, there is wheat whiskey, Lone Elm again. It has a 90-10 mash bill, 90% wheat, 10% barley. And when I reviewed, I believe it was the small batch, I was thinking, based on the label, that it was 100% wheat. And then when I reviewed the other one, I believe the single barrel, I thought to look up the mash bill and found out it's 90-10, in fact, which is still a very high wheat mash bill. You very rarely find a mash bill of anything. It's just 2 grains with the dominant grain being 90%. Now, there is a whiskey, I've done a review on it. You can look back at my review playlist. Solo, el Whisky de Mexico. It is made of a mash bill of 100% corn, a variety called cacao simple. And they take a percentage of it, a small percentage, I don't know exactly how much, and they sprout it, dry it, grind it. The rest they just nixtamalize it, I think is how you say it. It's the same process that you use to make hominy. You soak the stuff in lye water, it swells, the skin comes off, and they do that, then they dry that, and that, along with that small percentage of sprouted corn they grind together, it's a 100% corn mash bill. And I would love to see them age it in new charred barrels, and I'd love to see a barrel-proof version of it, or a single barrel version. Because as it is, they age it in used barrels, mostly used bourbon barrels. By requiring new charred barrels for bourbon and rye and wheat whiskey, we're chopping down a lot of oak trees, using the barrels one time, and then shipping them overseas and not getting the use out of them. They'll use a barrel over and over and over and over until there's just nothing left for it to give. And overseas, they're getting all the benefit. I think they should at least allow recharring of a used barrel. I started to say bourbon barrel, and then I realized not just bourbon, and so it came out barrel. I can tangle my tongue in my teeth. Just you wait. I'll do it again sooner or later. Now that Abasolo, being Mexican whiskey, doesn't have to go by American rules. It does. It's at least 80% corn. 100% is at least 80. It does age in used charred barrels, which is one of the 2 kinds of barrels that corn whiskey in the United States can legally age in. But their label doesn't say corn whiskey because it's Mexican. It's a Whisky de Mexico, and it says La Alma de la Tierra. Tierra. I can't roll my R's most of the time. It's the only fault I have in Spanish pronunciation. And that means something like the soul of the earth or the soul of the land. And my allergies are eating me alive. I took a pill and I think it made them worse. But back to this whiskey. I'm not trying to pick out a whole bunch, but it's dark and sugary and spicy, cinnamony on the nose. There's warmth in there. As soon as I open my mouth, I got heat. It's blooming across my tongue, mostly on the front end, just behind the tip. But on the palate, it's a mixture of dark and sweet. There's that dark earthiness of the cinnamon. There's brown sugar, but there's honey in there as well. And that warmth, I don't know how to quantify it. I've been trying for 4 years plus, and I just can't come up with any way to dissect it down, and so I just have to say warmth. finish is giving me cinnamon and brown sugar and oak turning into chocolate, dark chocolate, maybe even semi-sweet chocolate. And I'm getting a hug, 122.6 when I don't hold it in my mouth long but swallow it quick to get the finish. I definitely am going to get a hug. Even on a 90 proof whiskey, that's liable to happen. This is some better than the regular, better than the 90 proof. As I say, I believe that's what it is, the regular. Good whiskey. And I've had a good run of luck, although I don't believe in luck, I believe in divine providence. But as a way of speaking, I've had a run of good luck with wheat. I've always liked Rebel Yell, Rebel they call it now. I like to call it Rebel Yell because although the Southerners were not rebels, they weren't rebelling against the United States government, they were leaving the United States and forming their own country, just like we did in 1776. But that's a wheated bourbon. It has wheat in it. But I'd not had much luck with wheat until I come across the Bardstown Bourbon Company's Origin Series wheated bourbon, and that's right good. There's another one, and I can't recollect what it was now, but I come across the Lone Elm wheat whiskey. I'd seen it a few times and finally went and tried it because I want to try every single Texas whiskey I can. But there's so much else also that I don't always do that every time I buy something. That Lone Elm is fantastic. I'm trying to remember if Ironwood Harbinger is a wheated bourbon. I think it might be, but I don't know. But I've had a good run of wheat lately, and this is adding to it, although this is more expensive than the others, and so I won't buy this as often. But anyway, we'll be back to my old platform next time around, and I'll be the phone will be tilted back further so it can get me, and you'll see me the way you've seen me recently, past several months. In the meantime, this is not a review. I won't do that till the third glass or even further, but so far this is good stuff, and if you haven't tried it at this point, I recommend it. Here's how.